Hi everyone, this is Divya from Quickmommyhacks, and today I wanted to talk about mindfulness practice for stress, anxiety, and depression. And for this, I have a very special and knowledgeable person, David Lisson. So, David Lisson is a life mentor and a coach, and he's also a mental health counselor. He has a master's in mental health counseling and is currently practicing in New York City. He has been a monk for over a decade and was previously known as Venerable Cheng Wen, one of the few Western monastic disciples of Chan Master Sheng Yen. Since then, he has returned to lay life and has been teaching Chan or Zen meditation and mindful living altogether for 15 years. And he has been leading numerous intensive meditation retreats, classes, and activities at various meditation centers, as well as teaching at college campuses, private institutions throughout the US, Europe, and East Asia. Hi, David. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about mindfulness.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I guess, David, regarding mindfulness, my first question is what is mindfulness practice and what are the key points that are involved in mindfulness practice?
Mindfulness, depending on how you understand it and how you use it, it's a very broad term and has many applications. But in general, there's usually an agreed upon definition of mindfulness, which is helping a person to become fully aware of
Hmm.
themselves and of where they're at in the present moment.
Hmm.
Um, to be more detailed about that, we become aware of our body, of what we feel, which includes emotions. It also just includes sensations, whatever we contact. We become more mindful of our thoughts, thinking
Hmm.
patterns, um, and we can become more aware of our environment. This is
Hmm.
what we see, hear, feel.
Hmm.
So when a person's aware in the present moment, what does that mean? Also, there's a kind of a deeper level of meaning where this is not just an awareness of, oh, I know something, like intellectually knowing, like I feel sad or I feel happy. That's an idea. Okay, we can say, I know how I feel.
Hmm.
Awareness in the present moment means that we're completely conscious of our moment to moment state of body and mind,
Hmm.
not through an idea, but through direct experience. I think we can say that's the agreed upon general definition of mindfulness.
Hmm.
But it could also be looked at in two ways, which mindfulness can be a method, like some technique that we practice.
Hmm.
For example, mindfulness techniques include awareness of breathing.
Hmm.
That's one basic technique. So it can be a technique, but it can also just be a way of being
Hmm.
where we don't necessarily have to be practicing a technique, either sitting or in an isolated situation. We're just fully aware of ourselves and of where we're at in each moment,
Hmm.
which brings about a deep level of calm
Hmm.
and at the same time, mental clarity.
So, do you think like mindfulness is it different than yoga or meditation?
It could be different from yoga if the goal of that yoga practice is something different than the goal of mindfulness. And the same for meditation. There are many kinds of meditation
Hmm.
and they have different goals.
Yeah.
So if your goal is to meditate and to eventually, become successful and make money,
Hmm.
it's a different goal than mindfulness practice.
Hmm.
Although that could happen if you're more mindful, a
Hmm.
person could become more successful.
Hmm.
So mindfulness, we can say, it can be applied to yoga, it can be applied to meditation. Whether it's the same or not depends on the goal and depends on um, the attitude of the person.
So, is mindfulness, is it well established and evidence-based?
Sure. Um, in one sense, it's well established through a couple thousand years of mindfulness practice, which we see in the Buddhist tradition.
Yeah.
There may be many other religious or spiritual traditions that have a similar practice as what we
Mm-hmm.
call mindfulness. But the Buddhist tradition is one of those traditions which has preserved it and developed it very clearly. And that's where the modern mindfulness practice comes from.
Okay.
So, in that sense, it's established through the tradition of a couple thousand years and the benefits that we see through history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in more modern times, basically the past only about 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
30 or 40 years, where mindfulness practices have become evidence based.
Mm-hmm.
So, meaning people have done research trials,
Yeah.
whereas some people are doing mindfulness practice, some are not, and they're
Mm-hmm.
comparing the results of these practices, doing more scientific research and presenting
Mm-hmm.
their evidence.
So, what kind of mindfulness do you practice?
So the mindfulness that I practice is based on the Buddhist meditation.
Mm.
And in particular, I was trained in the Chan or the Zen Buddhist tradition,
Yeah.
which is a branch that developed in medieval China. And the mindfulness techniques or approaches that are within this system are, we could say, focus on the way of being.
Mm-hmm.
So focus on the fact that mindfulness is how we live our everyday life. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just something limited to sitting meditation
Mm-hmm.
or limited to formal practice.
Like, what are the key principles mindfulness focuses on, basically?
Mindfulness meditation, if we take it to its most comprehensive, if we look at it comprehensively, it has two major aspects. One is calming the mind
Mm-hmm.
or training the mind to be stable
Mm-hmm.
and less distracted.
Mm-hmm.
This is we could say regulating the emotional side of our mind,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
having our emotions calm and stable. The other side is what's called focusing on insight,
Mm-hmm.
insight or observation.
Mm-hmm.
So this aspect of the mindfulness meditation helps us to first become aware of
Mm-hmm.
our thinking and our feeling
Mm-hmm.
and our overall condition.
Yeah.
And initially, it can help us to adopt a new perspective on life,
Mm-hmm.
one which reduces our pains and anxieties.
Mm-hmm.
On a deeper level, though, it helps us to go beyond just adjusting our thinking
Mm-hmm.
and being able to see clearly the nature of our human experience,
Mm-hmm.
meaning to see very clearly how our feelings and thoughts are constantly changing
Mm-hmm.
and affected by the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, if a person can have a very clear awareness of themselves, of
Mm-hmm.
feelings and thoughts, and a very clear awareness of how the mind works,
Mm-hmm.
then a person can have an insight into what's referred to as, um, it can be hard to understand sometimes, but it's called selflessness,
Mm-hmm.
where the kind of burdensome, self obsessive, self centered thinking is dropped or let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be a very liberating and freeing way
Mm-hmm.
of being.
So, David, I mean, how can these mindfulness practices assist in cognitive and behavioral treatment, specifically of stress and anxiety? And, especially for the people who are more prone to depression or who have high, severity of depression.
Sure, because if we look at depression and anxiety, the phenomenon, what's happening,
Yeah,
a lot of depression is a product of this negative thinking,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
often very negative, repetitive thinking, which goes on often unnoticed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure all of us have been depressed or sad at one point, so we can relate to feeling sad and possibly having something happen. Let's say a loved one passes away, or
Yeah.
we lose a job or something dear to us. it's likely that we're going to be thinking about it a lot
Mhm.
and thinking about how it's lost,
Yeah.
thinking about how we're lacking, and then feeling more and more hopeless the more we dwell on it in
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to know that this happens almost um, unknown to us, or we're
Mhm.
unaware of it for maybe 80% of the time.
Yes.
20% or 10% of the time we notice and we're like, oh, geez, I was thinking about that again.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of the time we're unaware of it. So
Yeah.
mindfulness can, first of all, help us to become aware of how we are using our mind.
Mhm.
um, we can become aware of how we're dwelling on something possibly and just
Mhm.
thinking in a way which is it's creating depression. So mindfulness can first kind of turn the light on inside of us so that we could see that happening.
Mhm.
And one, it can help us to, we can choose how to think
Yeah.
and choose a perspective.
Mhm.
And on a deeper level, we can let go of whatever we're dwelling on.
Mhm.
Um, for anxiety, it's a similar process. It's just the phenomenon of anxiety is more of um, thinking about the future, worrying about the
Yeah.
future.
Mhm.
But it's also similar in that it's connected to kind of gain and loss.
Mhm.
We're afraid of losing something. We want to gain
Mhm.
something. So we constantly think about it and hope to either get it or
Mhm.
not lose it. So again, we with mindfulness, we become aware of those patterns.
Mhm.
And the more we become aware of them, the more we can either choose a
Mhm.
different way to think about it
Yeah.
or just choose to let go of the extra useless thinking,
Yeah.
which is often burdensome.
So, some of the people, could suffer from clinical depression and they are prone to severe depression issues.
Right.
So, can they adopt mindfulness along with the other treatment that they are seeking and use both of them hand in hand?
Sure. Mindfulness practices can be used in tandem with other, for example, psychotherapy treatments.
Hmm.
Could even be a traditional um, psychodynamic approach where a person with a therapist, they're exploring kind of deeper layers of their thought and memories, and
Hmm.
then at another time focus on their mindfulness practice. Sure,
Hmm.
it can be done in tandem.
If somebody is not able to concentrate properly, can they still practice mindfulness? And like where should they start from if
Yeah,
somebody doesn't know about mindfulness at all?
yeah, it's a good question. And often when when I'm talking about someone with meditation or even just discussing how they're doing with it, they may say, "Oh, I can't do it because I'm the kind of person who can't concentrate."
Yeah.
That's precisely the reason we meditate and practice mindfulness
Yeah.
is firstly, like I said, the calming aspect.
Yeah.
We're usually not calm because we're lacking concentration. We're
Hmm.
distracted. So of course, because we're distracted, we can train ourselves to be concentrated.
Hmm.
So for people who feel that like they're not cut out for it or they're not capable,
Hmm.
um, I would encourage them and say it's just a training like anything else.
Yeah.
On that aspect of concentration, it takes time to train ourselves or rewire ourselves, so to
Hmm.
speak, so we can be more concentrated, can be more stable.
Hmm.
And once we're stable, then the practice can have even more deeper transformative effects.
So how long do you have to do mindfulness practice before you actually see any results?
Good question. Everybody always wants results and probably faster. Um, it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
You know, some people it may take a couple of months.
Hmm.
In my experience working with people, on average, it takes a few months, let's say 3 months or so, 4 months before a person doing it regularly
Hmm.
develops strength from it and has obvious results. Other people, though, they may experience results the first time they sit. And most
Mm-hmm.
likely everybody experiences a little bit of results as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're doing it. Because, the moment we start to practice, the moment we become aware of ourselves, we're going to feel a little bit more relaxed, calmer, and if anything, we'll just be a little more clear of our
Mm-hmm.
condition.
Okay.
So, one more thing about that is that some people may find that when they start the practice, it seems like they're getting worse. It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize I had so much distracting thoughts or so many
Yeah.
worries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that things are getting worse, but they're becoming more aware of what was
Mm-hmm.
already happening,
Okay.
patterns of thinking and feeling that were happening unnoticed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so becoming aware of all that is great, and that itself is progress.
So, exactly what kind of results should we expect?
So, regarding what kind of results a person can get from mindfulness meditation, calmness is an obvious one. So, physically, a person's body would feel less tense, start to feel more comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah.
Muscles will be less tense, their nerves will be less jittery. For people with anxiety, they'll feel less of that nervous tension or dis-ease,
Mm-hmm.
feel more settled. For people who are struggling with depression, they may feel lighter, less
Mm-hmm.
of the heaviness that they may have felt before.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some physical or feelings that may result.
Mm-hmm.
Another result is that although they'll still have thoughts, we don't get rid of our thoughts when we meditate. We don't erase our thoughts or go into some state where there's just no thinking and blankness. Although some meditations can develop this kind of thoughtless concentration, mindfulness
Yeah.
is different.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness is about we still have thoughts, we still have feelings, thoughts come
Mm-hmm.
and go, but we become less distracted by them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also another kind of calm where
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are still happening, but we're
Yeah.
not pulled away by them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll experience a mental clarity and a sharpness,
Mm-hmm.
which is not just like being very alert and we can, respond fast.
Yeah.
It's a kind of clarity that comes from not being distracted.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, those are some results that people may experience the first time they do it,
Mm-hmm.
in degrees. And the longer a person does it and develops their practice,
Yeah.
the more stable, the more clear their body and mind become.
So, is mindfulness something which can be practiced by children and teenagers as well?
Sure, mindfulness can be practiced by anyone
Mm-hmm.
who has the conscious ability um, to use their attention
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to direct their attention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so children can do it, but likely the the length of time that a child, let's say 3 or 4 years old, could practice mindfulness, the time frame is very short.
Yeah.
So 1 minute, 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes
Yeah.
is pretty long for
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
A minute or two is long enough for them to close their eyes, be aware of their body, aware of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they can already at that age start to develop it.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, adolescents can do it as well for a longer period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and especially during that age where there's all kinds of major changes in their life. Mindfulness for an adolescent or teenager can
Yeah.
be an incredible tool to help them get through that often really painful
Mm-hmm.
stage of life.
If you were to give an advice to people of incorporating some simple steps which they can, practice in their daily life on day-to-day basis, what it would be?
Well, if they're serious about it, it's great to go to a class, get some instruction. You can read a book about mindfulness and practice it, but it is risky because we all understand things differently. And if we don't have
Mm-hmm.
someone to guide us, some sort of coach, like the same way that a coach guides an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to go a bit astray.
Mm-hmm.
So take a class, get instruction on it. That's one major step, so that later on you can be confident in how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are also retreats. So
Mm-hmm.
in addition to classes, there are activities where you can go for a weekend or for even a week or longer and
Mm-hmm.
really immerse yourself in a mindful way of living.
Mm-hmm.
So for people, I would say for people who are, adults, people who are able to sit for half an hour or longer many times a day,
Mm-hmm.
retreat can be very beneficial and
Mm-hmm.
transformative.
Okay.
On a day-to-day basis, though, practicing once a day, or once in the morning, once in the evening, at least once a day, whether it's
Yeah.
for 2 minutes, five
Mm-hmm.
minutes, or for an hour, doing it consistently is key. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking first about the sitting meditation.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we don't do it consistently, if it's not important to us, probably not going to get much benefit from it. But if we make it as important as eating a meal,
Uh-huh.
then we'll do it regularly.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and apart from that formal practice, in daily life, we can take a break every now and again, even during work, take a minute, 30 seconds just to, become aware of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
relax ourselves, let our
Mm-hmm.
minds clear for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we do that, here and there, we have moments of mindfulness,
Yeah.
then the more we can naturally integrate it into every moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes our way of being.
Yeah, so David, my last question to you is that you have been a monk for so long. So based on your journey as a monk and, being in that kind of environment, what kind of advice would you give to parents or moms? Because, they deal with stress and anxiety on different levels, and not just them in general, but, other people who deal with stress and anxiety in their daily life. What would be your words of advice for them?
Yeah, so, to put it simply, if we care for ourselves, if we care for our own quality of mindfulness, we'll be able to care for everyone else, much better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that even though we may feel overwhelmed and too busy to meditate, too busy to take time to take a walk, a quiet walk, a mindful walk, if we don't give ourselves time to nourish our own quality of mindfulness, then our own quality of life will suffer, and the people around us will suffer in that we won't be able to care for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to encourage everyone, if we make time for ourselves, everyone will benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those were great advices, and we got to learn a lot about mindfulness as well. So it was great having you. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you, Divya.
If you like our videos, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Quick Mommy Hacks, and follow us on Instagram for some personal tips on pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood. And do leave your feedback and comments. We would love to hear from you.